preparing sort of publication quality maps and plans, right? Because you're going to do a publication, depending on your discipline, you might end up in archaeology, hey, you have to produce a map showing all of the sites where you've got samples from. In anthropology or something else, maybe you just want a map showing your study area, right? So that you can illustrate to your audience, where it is that you're doing your research. So I think universally most disciplines knowing how to make a professional quality map that you can use in a publication is important, because you're going to find that when you're publishing, you have to have the copyright for what it is you're going to publish, or you have to produce something original. And this is a problem a lot of people have. Yeah? So my background is actually in what we call GIS, so Geographic Information Systems, and remote sensing using satellite imagery. So obviously I kind of favor those things, but I'm hopefully going to show how even you, if you've not used any of this before, you can create some very basic maps. And I'm going to show you using sort of hopefully two programs, at least one, but then I've got a tutorial that I'm going to give you that'll help guide you through doing the other one as well. So has anybody, and if you have a laptop and you want to follow along and you want to download Google Earth Pro or QGIS, feel free, but also you can do it in your own time. So has anybody ever tried to make a map using a program like Google Earth Pro, or you've tried? Yeah. Anybody else tried? Has anybody used a GIS before? Yeah. Couple people? Okay. Good, great, I love it. So today I'm going to talk a bit about, visualizing spatial data, and so that's, broad way of thinking. Anything, that we're talking about, where we're looking at ways in which we can show the relationships in space between things. What is a GIS? Some really simple kind of spatial data types and concepts. We're going to do a quick map in Google Earth Pro. And then one of the most important things is, what are the elements of a good map? I have seen many, many terrible maps. So many, I won't name names, but there are so many terrible maps out there. And it's quite easy to make sure that you have the really basic components that will make sure that your audience understands what it is that you're trying to tell them. I'll talk a little bit about image captions and attribution, and then if we have time, I'll go into a little bit about QGIS, which is a little bit more complicated, but actually really quite simple. And everything that I'm going to talk about today uses free and open source software, which is the first thing, so that you can actually do this by downloading these programs. And the other thing is that the products that we make from this will be either copyright free, or they're like open attribution, so you can actually publish them in academic journals and books and publications like that, because I think that's really important. So maybe I'll move this to make this smaller. So visualizing spatial data. So I'm talking spatial data, like I said, I'm talking about things like maps, so you can indicate where a city is, where your study area is, sampling locations. You might also want to create a map that shows a detailed outline of a particular building, right? Or, if it's archaeology, an excavation area or something. But while we're going to be looking at really simple visualizations today, just know that if you want to take this further, there's many more complex visualizations that you could get into producing with these kind of programs if you wanted to go further in learning more about this kind of thing. Predictive modeling, visibility analysis, cost surface analysis. You might have run across some of these sort of words being thrown around, even if you're not familiar with this. So today, I'm really going to focus on sort of really basic kind of maps for publications. So to kind of start off is that obviously I could just be like, hey, use this program and press these buttons. But I think people make better maps and visualizations if they understand sort of the concepts behind why they're doing it and the data that they're using. And so GIS, right? Like I said, Geographic Information Systems or Geographic Information Science. It's a big catch-all term that we use to talk about programs and ways that we can first capture and store huge amounts of data. We can query and we can analyze that data in a variety of ways, but we can also use it to present and analyze data in an attractive way, right? And so GIS is kind of the big term. And I like this image because if you think about it this way, it's that you can take different layers of spatial data and put them into sort of one container, which is the GIS, and then sort of produce things from that. And so any GIS, right, and by GIS I mean programs like ArcGIS and QGIS, but also things like Google Earth Pro or even Google Maps, those are a form of GIS. Right? It's just some of them have a simpler interface than others. And so all of these programs, though, use kind of two main types of data. So we have features, which are called vector data. And the simplest way to think about this is vector data are points, lines, and polygons. You know, any sort of shape that you kind of draw, that's vector data. And there'll be different file formats and different programs, but that's your basic, right? And then the other kind of data we work with are called raster data, or surfaces. And the easiest way to think about raster data is if you were to look at like a photograph, and then you zoomed way into it, it's composed of individual pixels, right? And each of those pixels has a value. So in this sort of example that I've got here, is that you can see, this is the SRTM, which is a type of digital elevation model. So those colors indicate different heights of the land surface. But if you were to zoom in and then continue to zoom in, each pixel has a numerical value, right? So that's raster data. So you can think of satellite images, you can think of these digital elevation models, that's a raster. Whereas any of those points, lines, or polygons you draw, that's vector data. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, stop me if anything doesn't make sense. I get really excited about GIS. You'll notice. The other thing you kind of have to think about when you're working with spatial data is how do you know where you are in the world, right?
Yeah.
How do you know where your map is or where these points are that you've taken with a GPS or these lines that you've drawn on a map, right? And we know this by using a coordinate system. So, what's the most common coordinate system that everybody knows? Right, latitude and longitude. Most people have heard of latitude and longitude, right? It's great, I learned it.
Yeah.
So, you know, most people are familiar with, you get two coordinates, latitude and longitude for a point, and it tells you where that is. And that's an example of a geographic coordinate system, which is measured in 3D, using the Earth's center as a central meridian, so latitude and longitude. So that's where you get, you know, a globe, and those coordinates tell you where you are on a globe. But often when we're working with spatial data, we want to be able to take that, so this is how we do this, take that sort of globe and turn it into sort of a flat map, right? And to do that, we have to use these things called projections. And so projected coordinate systems are just a way of taking that 3D globe and turning it into a 2D flat plane and then sort of laying over a particular grid over it. So a lot of people might have heard of UTM, like Universal Transmissorial, no? It's a different way of measuring coordinates. But the useful thing to just kind of grasp about that is that then you can actually measure real-world relationships between objects, okay? Don't worry, you don't have to know all of this now. I just want to introduce the idea so that you kind of might think about that when you're producing a map about, okay, what is it that I'm doing this in? You know, and you can go into more detail, and you can always email me and ask me if you guys are doing any GIS or maps. I'm really happy to help. And then the last thing to kind of know if we're working with a GIS is something kind of like attribute tables. So basically the genius of a GIS is that you're linking these features, like these points, to basically like a database, right? So each point or each line has information attached to it that can tell you about its location, but also the type of data it is, right? If it's a point, you can say what the city name is. Or if it's a sample, you can put the sample number, describe what the sample is. So it's a way to link the space and the attributes of that space together. And so in a GIS, on the left here you'll see this QGIS, you know, you get big attribute tables. But much more simply, if you're, say, in Google Earth, you know, and it asks you for properties, and that's where you can add that information that are attached then to that space, that point. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So those are kind of really basic concepts that I think are good to understand kind of going forward and thinking about how to use GIS. So in this session, what I'm going to show you briefly is how to use Google Earth Pro to make a map that you could then use in a publication. If you have a laptop here, and has anybody downloaded Google Earth Pro already? Has anyone?
No.
Okay, a few people have already done it. Feel free to do it later on as well, if you want. And I also, yes, I can also share some more resources later on that you guys can use. Because another project that I work on, we've produced tons and tons of these guides, as well as we have a YouTube channel where we have videos of instructions on how to do things like making maps and all this kind of stuff through the Amina project that I work for. So happy to share all of that with you as well. So I'll also then provide you, I have some copies here of a tutorial how to make a simple map in QGIS. We've printed out a few of them here that we can share. We can print more. I can also share the PDFs with you. And then at the end, I've also got, I've made a document for everybody that has useful information like the links to the programs, links to YouTube tutorials on how to use both Google Earth Pro and QGIS, where to get data that you can use for free and all that kind of stuff. So I've made this as well, so please pass that around. So hopefully you can find the information that you need. So, but Google Earth Pro, how many people have like used Google Earth Pro to like find their house or whatever? Yeah, everyone, right? Everyone's like, what's my house look like from space? You know, we've all tried it. Has anyone tried to use it to do any sort of research before? A few people, yeah. You know, there's a lot of reasons, and I won't go into all of that today, why we might use satellite imagery and all that kind of stuff to do research. But basically, Google Earth is a kind of a GIS. It's quite simplified in the fact that it's got quite a simple user interface and sort of limited analytical capabilities, right? There's limited things that you can do with the analysis in it, but it's still quite useful for certain aspects. And we can make maps in which we can add our own vector data. So that is points, lines, and polygons. And it stores that data in something called the file extension that you'll see is KML or .kmz. And KML is just keyhole markup language. It's a big word. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about that. Just know, keep hitting the microphone, just know that if you have a .kml file, that opens in Google Earth Pro, and that's going to be your vector data. Yeah, it's sort of a basic file type of that. So the kind of maps that we can make in Google Earth Pro are quite simple ones like this. This is one I made upstate Durham. This is where I work at Durham University. We have a World Heritage Site, and this is just a little map showing some of the key features at the Durham World Heritage Site, right? But we can include sort of all this, and in something like this, if you attribute it correctly, you can publish in an academic publication, right? And there's no copyright attached to it, which is really quite useful. So, do we have time? So what I was going to do is I was going to open up Google Earth Pro right now and just show you guys some of the basics of how you might be able to make a map. And if you want to follow along, then feel free. But also, there's a YouTube tutorial that you can go and do it in your own time, as well as on the list. So let me just, I'm going to have to do a little here. So one thing to know is that there's different versions of Google Earth, right? There's this sort of web browser one that you can open up on the internet. But if you want to make maps, you need to download the Google Earth Pro, okay? So, now I have to stop sharing. I have to share this other screen, don't I? Just a moment, everyone. Okay. Everyone's familiar with this, right? And so usually when you open it, you get a big, lovely picture of the globe. And general controls, people are probably aware you can zoom in, you know, you can zoom out, you can pan around. You can also, I'm going to move this. This here is the sidebar, and this is where we can save all the information about places that we record. And it also has all the information about layers that we might be able to see in this map. And so just focusing on sort of these layers down here, some of these you might want to turn on or off depending on what you want to see. But things like borders and labels are quite useful things to keep in if you want to know about country boundaries or things like that, right? But some of these other ones I find are kind of cluttery, and they can add a lot of extra things to your map that you don't really need. So I wouldn't necessarily put those on if you're making a map for a publication. You want to keep it kind of simple and easy to see. The basic thing here is there's a search bar in here, and if you want, you can try to search for a place. So, for instance, we can search for Tashkent, right? We can hit search. And then Google Pro will take us to where we asked to go. Not every location is going to be able to be searched that way, but you know, it's always worth checking. You can also search by using coordinates. And so we talked about coordinate systems before, and you'll notice that if you look down here in the bottom of the screen, can you see here? Is that those are the coordinates of wherever your mouse is. And at the moment, those are given in latitude and longitude, right? And so the thing is that we can change that to be in, you know, different formats of latitude and longitude. We can change that to be in UTM if we wanted to use a projected coordinate system. And that information is all under the tools here. And so if we go to tools and then options, you can see here where it says show lat long. We can choose to display this in decimal degrees, and then you'll see it's changed now to decimal degrees. You could choose to be working in UTM, Universal Transverse Mercator, and then it would change that if we hit apply, right? And you see that it's changed it to that. But let's just stick with something simple like decimal degrees for the minute, okay? If you want, then you can enter the coordinates of a particular place into the search bar as well. And especially, I don't have this up right now, but you can just look online and it'll tell you the correct formats of how to format different coordinate systems. So you can add those coordinates and it'll zoom you in to those coordinates, okay? So that's how we can search for places, find locations. So let's just make a simple map where we're gonna highlight some places in Tashkent. Say I'm writing an article and I need it to show me where Tashkent is, and I want to actually draw the boundaries of the city, right? That's the important thing that I wanted to show in this particular article. So you have various options here. You can create points, polygons, and what's the third thing? Lines. Yay, our favorite vector data types. So you can choose. And what you want to do is, in my places here, I mean, I've got a lot of other data in here from various other projects, but you want to go into my places, and then you want to click on whatever you want to create. So if you want to add a place mark, this is just a point. You click on that, and then you can move this place mark around, and then you can give it a name, right? Yeah. And so you can give it a name, Tashkent. You can also change if you click on the style color button, you can change the color of the label, you can change the size of the label. You can change the color of the icon. So, go back to just quickly. So if you want to create a new place, just make sure you're here in the My Places folder, and then go up to the top here, click on the push pin, click on the polygon if you want to draw a polygon, right? Instead, I'm going to draw a polygon, and I'm going to put, this is the city limits of Tashkent or something like that. If you want to add a little bit of information in this box, you can add a bit more information in there. And then if you are doing polygons, you can just draw, see? And you just draw, draw, draw.
And the name appeared on the map.
And it will appear on the map. Do you see it happening as I draw this polygon?
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not going to take a long time to draw a full polygon, but let's just say I've put this over. Okay. Let's just say I've done a better job of drawing the city limits of Tashkent. I apologize in advance if I've missed out any important parts of the city. And then when you're done, you can click OK. And then you'll see that it's created this polygon in the places menu. Okay? If you right click on that, you can go to the properties, and you can again change the color of the polygon. If you just want it to be a line without any fill in it, you can change it. You know, I want to make it a brighter color so I can see it. You know, I'm going to make this green, and I'm also going to make it wider. I'm going to make it wider so that it's easier to see. Whatever, okay. So, you know, you can do that with whatever you need to label on your map. My advice would just be to make sure that it is clear and not too cluttered, right? I think one of the things that people tend to do is they're like, I have so much information and I have to put all of this information on this map. You do not need to put all of the information on the map. Maybe you need to have 2 maps or 3 maps. It is better than 1 map with too many things on it. That would always be my advice. So, okay. So say we've added a bunch of information, and we put it all on our map, okay? And I think I created earlier. I created a sorry, just make that small. I created a point for where we are now. Wow.
So where we add the information?
So if you are in the shape that you've drawn, right?
Yeah.
You can add it when you create the shape, but if you close the shape, you can also right-click on it, and you can go to Properties, and then you can add a name, as well as information down here in this box. Yeah? And then whatever you write here in the name, that's what it's going to display in the label.
Is there a word limit?
Probably, but I would definitely not explore that option. I would say, oh, I think we have to mute someone, don't we? Okay, is there a mute option? The big one? The big button? Okay, great, thank you. Keep your labels short if you can, yeah? I'll show you in a minute how you can add. So, your labels should be short if they're on the map.
It's like on the Beagle, right?
Oh, okay. Are they muted? Okay. You can add more information in the legend, or it's sometimes in the caption or in the text. But please do not put paragraphs on your map. Please don't. Some people do. You'd be surprised. So, okay. So we've added what we wanted to on this map. So now I want to create a printable version or you know, a publishable version that we can put in an article. There are 3 things that every map should have. What are they?
The title?
Title is optional.
I mean,
A legend, the north arrow, and what's one other thing? Scale bar. I never want to see a map that doesn't have those 3 things on it. I'll be watching. So I tell my students, I was like, if you submit an assignment to me and it does not have those 2 things on your map, I will be very upset. Don't worry, I'll show you a slide with them in a minute so you can see everything. But those are the 3 things I always want you to put on a map, right? Because they're really important. So to be able to create this into a map, we can go to the File menu here, and we can go to Save. And then if we go to Save Image, it will then take us into a map screen. Do you see? And if you want to get rid of the sidebar, because you don't want that, you can just click this. And it automatically puts in those elements. What does this say? Do I click OK?
It will end in 10 minutes.
Okay, can I click OK? Okay. It automatically puts those elements into the map, but we can change those depending on what we want in our map. Okay? So, here where it says map options, and obviously your Google Earth might be in a different language, but the things should be in roughly the same places. In map options, we can take on things that we want in our map and the things we don't want in our map. So in this case, a title and a description, that's optional. If you want a title and a description, you can put it in there, right? If you don't want it, if you just tick it off and click save, it goes away. Okay? Oh no, sorry. Tick it off and it goes away. Don't click save yet. But the things that we definitely want, we want a legend, we want to have a scale bar, and we want to have what they call a compass or a north arrow. Okay? So the thing is though is that it just automatically sticks them in wherever it wants, but you can move them around. So if you go up to the legend and you hover over it, and you can grab it, and you can say, actually, I want it to be in this corner. The other thing is if you want to edit what's in that legend, click on the big pencil, and you can decide if you want all of these things in your map, or you only want some of them. So say I don't want this Tashkent label, we can take it out. If I want to change the name of the label, I can double click on the word and I can change the name of the label. Okay? And then you can just click it. The same for your north arrow and your scale bar. If I actually want to move it over slightly, I can just drag it, move it over. You know, maybe I want my north arrow to sit on top. Maybe I want it to sit here. Maybe I'm looking at this map and saying, actually, I think that the north arrow is too small, right? I want the north arrow with the scale bar to be bigger. So in map options, you have this scaling option. And so if you changed it to say 120%, everything would just get that little bit bigger, okay? And you don't want it too big, but in general, you want to be able to read quite easily those things on a map. You don't want them to be too small. And the thing is that as you're working with Google Earth, if you zoom in and out, you'll notice that the scale changes, the north arrow changes. Did you see? Right? It'll change it for you. If you're doing that and you're like, oh no, I want it to go back to being north, hit the R key, the letter R, and it will automatically take you back to north. That's my trick of the day. Okay, so say you're happy, you know, you've got your scale bar, you've got your north arrow, you've got your legend, all the elements you want to see. It will automatically put this information here about the source of the data. You cannot change this, and this has to be in this if you were going to use it for a publication or anything like that. And this just tells you the information that it comes from Google Earth, and this is the information about the imagery providers. Okay? So you have to have that. How much time do I have? Okay, I'm going to be quick. Right, I'm not going to go into too many more details about this. Okay, so with this, we have this map. We like this map. You can also choose the resolution of your map. I think you remember when I talked about publications, I said make sure your images are high enough resolution that when they're reproduced in a publication, they are still readable, right? So you can try looking at the different resolutions. You know, if you want it in high definition, it might change the scale slightly. But you can look at where you're publishing to find out what, you know, resolution you'd like to have this in. So let's say I'm happy with my map now. If I go to this button here that says Save Image, it will then ask me where I want to save it. Automatically save it as a JPEG. That's fine. So you give it a name. So I'm going to call this, you know, my map of Tashkent. Right? And I'm just going to save it as a JPEG, and I'm going to save it. Now you can go to that, just save it here. You can go to where you saved it, and when you open it up, Oh no, it's not going to show me because I'm using a different program, isn't it? I'm going to have to stop sharing and sharing again. Here we go. You will have a nice map, right, that you can then use in your publication to show your sites or sample locations. So this is really basic. If you can do more stuff with GIS, but this is really basic and an easy way to create something that you can publish academically. So basically, you can use on the Google Earth website, it gives you all the information about the ways in which you can use it, right? And for non-commercial, so you can't use it to make money, but for non-commercial uses, like publishing an academic article, you can include this image in, right? So this is a great way to just have that kind of information in your publications. So just quickly, okay, I'm going to share again the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so I know that was really quick, but like I said, I've given you guys some resources so you can go back and go through the tutorials, watch the YouTube videos, and go through it again. So just to finish off, then, right, like I said, the non-negotiable elements of your map with 3 exclamation points: scale bar, north arrow, and legend. You can also include a title, or you can include some labels on your map as well, right? But you always want to make sure that either there's labels on the map, or you have symbols in the map that then are described in the legend, okay? So this is just an example of a map that I made for a publication I did, where I've got sort of a line drawing here, and I've got a satellite image there, and I've made sure to include those things. There's probably things I would improve about this now, but just to give an example. So, looking at this map that somebody made, what would you do to improve this map? How would you make it better?
Bigger, like the names?
Absolutely, I would make the labels much bigger so that they're easily readable. Anything else? What about potentially using some sort of background imagery or something to give it some more interest so that it's a bit more, because here you're like, well, what am I looking at? A river and some buildings, right? You either might want to find more vector data to illustrate other buildings. You might want to use a digital elevation model to show the terrain. You might want to use some imagery from Google Earth just to make it a bit more interesting, depending on what you want to do, right? Otherwise, it does have a scale bar. It does have a north arrow. There's a few things you can do to make this a bit better, right? But it does have the essential elements. Quickly, the last couple things I want to talk about: image captions. So how I said, don't put a paragraph on the map. Also, don't put a paragraph, like a huge paragraph, in your image captions. Your image captions should be brief and informative, and then refer to the text, because hopefully you've described in the text why this image is important to be included in your publication, right? So your image captions should say something like, so here for this image I've created, this is a plan of terraces and other features at these 2 archaeological sites. Right, and then people look at the text, the descriptions of those archaeological sites and how that ties in. Or, plan of structure A, rooms specifically discussed in the text are highlighted in red. Or just something that directs people to what it is you're trying to show. The last thing, and this is so important, is image accreditations and copyright. Make sure that you check to see if you are allowed to use images and illustrations from another source, okay? So in some cases, you're creating a new map, and like I've said, Google Earth has rules about how you can use it, and one of those is you can use it in particular contexts for academic work. But maybe you want to use something that comes from an article that was previously published, right? You need to make sure that you have permission to do that. So some things will be in the public domain, which you can use. Some things authors will have put out under things like a Creative Commons or other similar license, which would allow you to reuse it. Imagery available for non-commercial educational use, like I said, like Google Earth. But even if you're allowed to use it, you need to make sure that you put the accreditation, the information about where it came from, in the caption. So for imagery, for example, I would always put that the image is copyright whoever the provider was on Google Earth, right? And I'd say, from Google Earth. If you want to reuse a map or an image from another source, poor people on Zoom, then you need permission. And often you can write to the author or the publisher of the journal or wherever this and ask them for permission to reuse that, right? So always worth checking. And so, I knew I wouldn't have time for this, but if you want to do more, if you want to go to more depth using GIS, if you want to create slightly, oh sorry, so now it's not even showing on the screen, is it? Okay, anyway, it doesn't matter. They're saying if you want to create a little bit more complicated maps, if you want to be able to do other sorts of analysis, then a great program to try is QGIS, which is free to download, free to use, right? And on that handout that I've given you information on how to download it, as well as a YouTube video that you can watch. And there's the guide to making maps, and that's where you can make slightly more complex maps, like the ones I showed you that I've made of those terrace systems and stuff. That's done in a GIS, so you can add a little bit more complexity to your maps and do certain types of analysis.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Which disciplines? It's like
Which, sorry?
disciplines, I mean.
Like which disciplines use it?
Well, we as an architectural historians always use maps.
Yeah,
Architecture, sorry, historians, archaeologists, anthropologists, geologists.
Recording in progress.
Yeah, I would say anybody.
And even you, if you are focusing on the modern day sociology, you can always show your study area using these maps, which gives you a visualization of the area. It's always better to give them a visual kind of map rather than providing extensive explanation of where that village is located.
Sorry, I'm done. It's okay.
You're not done.
I'm done, so I'm not going to do any more, so don't worry about this. So basically, absolutely, Del Ramo, what you said is absolutely perfect. Like, any discipline might want to use this. I could go into a lot more technical details about types of analysis that I do in archaeology, but the fundamental, the basics are used by everybody, right?
Yes. And another thing is that it actually differs from discipline to discipline. And I was kind of historian and moving to the architectural school, I've been always told that we are people, visual people. Show us something that, and it's like historians do all the text kind of PowerPoints, show us what you are talking about. And,
where are you talking about?
Yes,
right?
exactly. And people like to see images and things, maps, and remember that easily.